Welcome to Consciousness Unfiltered. Get ready for a very different, vulnerable, and uncensored conversation with Dr. Anthony Mattis and his amazing guests. They'll be sharing the powerful tools of Access Consciousness that have helped thousands of people all over the world to create change in every area of their lives.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Consciousness Unfiltered. I am Dr. Anthony Mattis, and I am joined by my wonderful friend, Access Consciousness Certified Facilitator, Ana'a Albufaraj. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yay. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about sort of like your background, like your professional background before you became an Access Consciousness Facilitator.
I'm going to start by saying it's like my professional background is I studied law, but it's like I'm Saudi. If anyone of you knows Saudi, it's a country in the Middle East that was one of the strict countries in the Middle East. So religion and it's like the gender equality wasn't that part of it.
Yeah.
So that's why I chose to study law. And then it's like in my master's, I did human rights, gender law.
Yeah.
So I always imagined just like people having their rights, especially social equality.
Wow.
When it comes to men and women, it's like, and the role of them.
Yeah.
So I studied that and I worked in university. So like in a way to teach people their right and teach women specifically about their rights. And it's like about their right to be human and their voice in the world. Yes.
That's beautiful. And you actually spent some time in the United States, right?
Exactly.
Can you say more about that and what your experience was and where you went? What did you do when you came here?
As anyone in this planet is like the US shows and TV and media just bring us in another place. So like I learned equality from watching movies. And like and seeing people with the movement, and everything started from the States. So like I was like living the American dream from the TV. So like I chose to go there because I was like, okay, this is the place that is gonna respect me as a human being. So I went at the beginning. It's like my family refused this, like the idea of a woman alone without a guardian, without a husband to travel to go there.
Yeah.
Back then, I didn't know that I was asking questions, but I asked.
What year was this? Well, what year was that? What year did you come to the States?
2009.
2009. Okay, cool. Did you come to university here? Or you just came to work, or what?
I came for my master's. Then I worked in the United Nations in a human rights sector.
Wow, in the United States, you did that.
In the United States, Washington, D.C.
Wow. And then what school did you go to for your master's?
I went to Washington College of Law. In American University. I chose that university. It has a story because it was the first university in the States that accept women to study law. So women established that.
Wow.
Yes.
That's fantastic. That's so brilliant. What a great idea. Awesome. Well, yeah. So here we are today. It's 2022. So that you've been working in universities as a law professor and teaching about human rights and women's rights and equality, and we're still fighting for those sorts of things in our country as well today. Now we're actually fighting for medical rights, right? The rights to do, to be in choice of what you want to do to your body from a medical standpoint. So, but that's another conversation for another day. We're not going to do that, but just recently, we've had Global Bars Day. A lot of you may know I've been an Access Conscious Facilitator for 10 years. And I met, when did we meet? What year was that? Like 2017, maybe?
Exactly.
Yeah. We met at a Access Consciousness 7-day event in South Africa. And I remember you coming up to me and you just had all this sort of, you were just full of life and possibility. And I really didn't think anything of it because I didn't, like, you told me you were from Saudi, but I felt like you were from the Western part of the world. And it really wasn't until you invited me to come to your country where it like really hit me. I'm like, wow. And so for you to, one of the things that impressed me about you the most amongst a lot of different things, but the one thing that stands out was for you to come to the United States, take this really bizarre modality called access consciousness. Women weren't even allowed to drive in 2017, right? I mean, my goodness, but you still chose to come here and study the tools of access consciousness. And I'm like, that takes balls. I mean, that's no like, that just takes big balls, and not a lot of people do that. So it wasn't until I came to your country where I saw what it was like. And at that time, I think women, I think 6 months prior to my arrival, I think women were starting to be allowed to drive automobiles. And I'm like trying to wrap my head around this, you know what I mean? Because really, as Americans, the only thing that we get to see about the Middle East is the bullshit that you see on TV, unfortunately. And it's usually never of anything great. It's always just bullshit, religious zealots, and all the crap you might see in movies. And it's always like a terrorist or something like that, right? That wasn't my experience when I came there. My experience was like this huge level of generosity of spirit. I remember just random people that you didn't even know in the streets, men would see me from across the street, and they would put their hands on their heart, like over their heart like this, and be like, welcome. And I'm like, did he just really, I'm like, and then we went to a cafe, they invited us in, and they gave us, and then they played music for us, and they gave us free coffee and tea. And they're like, let the Western world know that all the stuff you see on TV, that's not all of what it is. It's just a small little part. We're also this. And it was just so beautiful. So, and I've been to Saudi twice, the first time in Jeddah and the second time in Riyadh. And so it's been a gift. And at the same time, you invited me into this world of like, wow, like, whoa, like the restrictions and the points of views and what you can and can't do. And I really, you take it for granted when you live in the United States. And so for you to become an access consciousness facilitator and to bring this work to your country, that's no small feat at all. I mean, that takes a lot of courage and power and potency, and you have that. And so I just want to acknowledge that. And so talk about like where you were at your life, so here you are, you're a professor, you're doing your thing in your country. Like, what made you even want to investigate access consciousness? How'd you even hear about
it? Thank you for mentioning those nice things that you perceived and you were aware of in Saudi. Mostly before I went to the States, I know the cultural things that now I appreciate. I didn't appreciate those before I come to access consciousness. Because everything was inside of my eyes. I see people and women around me, and they have their right. They don't have a right to drive a car or to travel or to marry someone they love. There is like, if the first work, the first time I worked as a lawyer, my father signed a paper for me. He has the permission for me to drive. My father, and then my father passed away. After that, it's like I remember my sister. They had to operate on her, and my father was dead, and my mother, they didn't accept my mother's signature.
Wow.
Unbelievable. They said it's like it has to be male. And then my brother came, but my mother was a madness to it. So it's like I'm in a family that I'm grateful for my mom, because it's like I learned independency since I was young from her. And she was fighting all of that. So I said, it's like, I have to have a voice here or to change something. Yeah. And it's like when I studied law, I was the first, I was from the first people who graduated with a law degree in Saudi. I started, it was 2005. When I started.
Before you go on, let me ask you a quick question. If you had no brothers, then what?
Then your uncle, the first relative, your uncle or your, and it has to be from the father's side, not the mother's side.
Yeah, so what if there were no uncles, though? What if there were no uncles? What if there were only sisters?
You go to the judge.
God. Oh my God, that's crazy. Okay. All right, sorry. Okay, so anyway, go on. Just trying to wrap my head around this. Hopefully those of you that are in the Western part of the world, be grateful for the way things are, okay? And stop taking your life for granted.
The way I did in other stuff that Anthony just mentioned. and he was grateful for. And just to give you a note, everything, if you're hearing us, everything changed after Axis entered the country.
Wow. Say
So
more.
everything, yes. So it's like the hospital admission, the work admission, choosing to study, choosing to drive, to travel, everything. So now it's like there's equal rights.
Wow. That's
Between
wonderful.
and this is just came.
That's amazing.
Going through all of that, it's like I'm a woman. It's like I always knew that I had a brain and I'm smarter like everyone around me. I was like a stubborn a bit, but it's like I knew it's like if I chose something, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
So coming back from the state, and I learned a lot from that culture. I learned how to be a human. I learned a lot. I know it's like a lot of people, they judge whatever is there, but it's like I learned the respect in the States. And
Wow.
now in Access we say allowance, but before that it was acceptance. I like that in the States, because they were accepting me from a Saudi woman to be in international class, and my English is not that right, and it's like they were open hands for me everywhere, even it's like when I went for the UN. But it's like there was the judgment side. It's like whenever it's like we spoke about domestic violence law, now we had it. That then it's like we didn't have any rights for women. So like I was like, I'm here to change it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I'm grateful that I'm here, and I'm going in my country to change it.
Wow.
So I came back, and everything was nice and good, and I had like my family are not the most of the families you see in the area and stuff, but it's like I wasn't happy. I was holding all of the suffering from the people, like a woman that couldn't divorce, they couldn't have a divorce. So a person that couldn't travel to continue her education, a woman that didn't work because her husband didn't allow her to go. So like I was holding all of that pain and suffering. And then it's like I learned who does this belongs to. Because I thought I am be the healer, I'm gonna change all of that. It didn't, and I was in fight with everyone around me. Men hated me back then. Because whenever I see a person, it's like I just wanna, he's the reason that I'm not doing that.
Wow.
Once I remember, it's like my brother is like, he just came with me to the States. So like I rent my apartment and to help me, and I was fighting with him. And he told me, I don't know why you're fighting with me. I didn't know back then, but I was fighting that. It's like he's here with me, and I didn't see the help.
Wow. So basically anybody with a penis you were fighting against.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly. When the tools of access came, I found it online. It's funny.
Like what were you looking up though? What were you Googling? Like what was going on in your mind when you went to the computer?
I was like, okay, now I have everything. And I was reading in laws of attraction. So okay, universe, whomever God is there, I want something that I can be with, like something that I can feel, I feel it or be it. At that time, I didn't know what is being. I was like, I want to feel something. I want to be happy. I accomplished a lot of things that I was asking for, but there is no happiness. There is no ease or peace with all of that.
And that's very interesting because you had a lot of goals, right? You had a lot of goals that you set for yourself and you achieved them and you got them and you still found yourself very unsatisfied.
Unsatisfied, zero.
Yeah. Gotcha. Wow. Zero. That's huge. After all those accomplishments, you had zero satisfaction. That's crazy. Wow. Okay. So go on. So you go online, you learned about the law of attraction. You started just basically calling out to God or the universe, whatever, be like, something's got to change.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then one person just told me, and it's like, I was like, okay, universe, this is going to show up. So one person told me about a person that I called, and she just ran one clearing. She didn't live in Saudi. She was living in Lebanon. And I was writing right, wrong with whatever I got from her. And then from a YouTube video to YouTube video, I couldn't stop watching Gary and Dane.
Wow.
They spoke to everything I know in my life.
So Gary and Dane, for those of you who don't know, Gary Douglas is the founder of Access Consciousness. And these tools have been around for about 30 years. Gary Douglas is the one who sort of discovered it. He kind of went about his way for 10 years. And then Dr. Dane here, who's the co-creator of Access Consciousness, he kind of came on, and Gary kind of formed this like amazing creationship where Access Consciousness has exponentialized from that point on to 176 different countries. So you're watching Dane and Gary's videos, and this is all free content that's available for people on YouTube.
Yes, and back then, it's like in 2016, they didn't have a lot of resources online.
Right.
So it's like I had to like search deeper and deeper, and then I came across Being You.
Being You, Changing the World, which is a book that was written by Dr. Dane here, and there's also classes called Being You, Changing the World. Yep.
So I called whatever the Access Consciousness, and I told them, it's like, I want to see those guys, Gary and Dane.
Yeah. Okay.
And I saw that they had a class in Washington, D.C. And back then, it's like my sister used to live in Washington. So they told me, it's like, you got to study bars and foundation. I didn't know what is bars and foundation. And I was like, okay, let me go.
Again, in the bars is pretty much the first class you take, and it deals with these 32 points on your head that carry the electromagnetic components of all your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and considerations in the areas of money, healing, sadness, joy, body, image, sexuality, you name it. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. But so that's where you start. It's wonderful, wonderful therapy. You can learn about it at www.accessconscious.com. There are facilitators all over the entire planet. Go get your bars ran, because it could save your life. That's best case scenario, save somebody's life, because it saved Dr. Dane here's life. He was suicidal, and that's how he got involved.
It changed my country.
Save your country. We're going to get to that in a second. But we're going to get to that in a second. And then, and then the worst case scenario, you just feel really, really relaxed. And it's just a great way to defrag the brain. So, all right. So you learned about the bars and the Being You class. Is that what it was?
Yes. And then it's like, I was looking, it's like, where's the classes? So like I see Gary and Choice of Possibility. So I took them back to back. In 1 week, I took the bars class, and then the second class of Access Consciousness, you called the foundation for 4 days. And then it's like, I went to Choice of Possibility. And from being from another culture, totally different culture, I'm not saying about, it's like, yes, I'm coming from a different culture and I studied in the States, but it's like, whatever it is in those classes, it spoke to me, the being, the person that I always dreamt. Like when I was young, I was like, it has to be a formula or catalog for a person. And then it's like in the foundation, I said, oh, here's the catalog I was looking for since I was young.
Wow. That's amazing. So you started taking these classes, they started changing your life. You went on to become a facilitator, a bars facilitator, and Access Consciousness certified facilitator. Do you have any other certifications in Access?
RDD. I'm a relationship done different.
Relationship done different. Those are some great classes right there. And what else? Anything else so far?
1 day body class.
1 day body class. Awesome. So yeah, you can take some of these amazing body classes that Gary Douglas and Dr. Dane here created over the last 30 years. They're just quite magical. So share with us sort of like, what were your tools? What do you remember like in your journey in the beginning about what were like the tools? What tools could you share with the audience that you actually used, where you actually started to perceive the shift, and where all those voids that you had that could not get filled by becoming a lawyer, by being a teacher, by getting women's rights, by fighting against the establishment, none of that filled any of your voids. So what tools did you start using along the way that actually started to give you more of you, so much so that you actually decided to leave being a professor to be a full-time Access Consciousness facilitator? So what were the tools that you used, and when did that switch occur? for you to leave your profession to be a full-time access consciousness person?
So the first thing is like, I remember is like when I went to these classes, it's like a tool that I just mentioned, who does this belongs to in the bars?
Yeah.
So who this belongs to is like, I came from a place that there's no social equality on. And I felt, as I told you, it's like I was carrying behind my back all of the women, like a woman suffering behind my back. So I started, okay, who does this belongs to? And I found out it's like all of, I used to have a bit of panic attacks, but it's not much. But it's like whenever the idea of the justice comes to my mind, I just ask, who does this belongs to? And that gave me like a clear vision.
Yeah.
About the situation that we are.
Wow. So you realize that the anxiety, the rage, the anger, that none of it was really yours.
Exactly. And that here's the place where it's stopping me from being me or being happy.
Whoa, because you're too busy fighting.
Exactly.
You're too busy fighting everybody else's battle.
Exactly.
And fighting everybody else's thoughts, feelings, and emotions that you were tuning into like the radio in your car.
Exactly.
Right. So there was no room for you to be you.
There is no room for me to be me. And It's like, I thought it's like my job to solve all of that. And then it's like, I learned interesting point of view.
Big burden. So what Ana'a is talking about is in Access, the 10 keys to freedom. And one of them is to live in and as the question. And so one of the first questions that she learned was, for every thought, feeling, and emotion she would have, like in her case, would be anxiety and anger, rage, fear, and hate were kind of like the dominant emotions that were keeping her from being you, or keeping you from, right? To ask, who does this belong to? And you started realizing it was everybody else's universes that you were tapped into, which is, that could change the face of mental illness and anxiety disorders, insomnia on the planet, if people just had that one tool, plus the bars. Okay, so you got there, and then interesting point of view. I have this point of view, which is very, very, very interesting, being that here you are fighting for women's rights, and now you have to live an interesting point of view. Say more about that.
Interesting point of view, because it's like there's the two sides that I want to create and stuff, and there's the things that I thought it's my goal. They were holding me. And I learned this, like, I knew that if I demand something, it's going to change it. And if I created problems, I'm going to change more of it. So
like, what did you say, like your goals were holding you? They were like imprisoning you, or your point of view, or both? My point of view and my goals. It was like a prison. It was, yeah. Because the way I was taught, it's by movement, by raising your voice, by fighting the other party. Right. Or the government, whatever. That's the way we're going to take our rights. So it was holding me of being me. Right. So the possibilities of me and anything around me, it wasn't on the surface. Wow. Amazing. So I was it started to be interesting point of view for everything. And now it's like, if you want to use the tool, it's like the system, the health system around the world is like, if you want to change it, it's being interesting point of view. It's the place we can create more. Not so much the fight. Not too much to fight or to resist. Interesting. Wow. Could you imagine if all the political figures and the doctors and the scientists can all get together and function from this standpoint? It makes you almost wonder, because I know they're not stupid people, but it makes you almost wonder if there isn't an underlying agenda that they're not going to ever admit, because it's like part of being a scientist or a think like an intellectual, a forward thinker, going to these universities where people are brilliant and to have critical thinking. And for some reason right now in this time period, it's like critical thinking has been wiped out. It's like nobody can ask questions anymore. Nobody can think for themselves. Scientists aren't coming together. Instead, they're dividing in half. You got the ones over here that are aligning, agreeing with the narrative, and you got the ones over here that are like, beware, this is not science, we're being duped, right? And then so you got the common person being like, what the heck do we do? What do we choose, right? So So this is really brilliant. And what would that take for us to actually have that amongst all those different communities? I wonder how much our world would be and look differently on many, many levels right now. I mean, this is brilliant what you're doing and what you're saying. And it's very, like I said, I go back to the whole brave thing, because to do what you're doing, it's easier to do it here in the United States. Do you get what I'm saying? To do it what you're doing where you're from, that's a lot of courage. So go on. So you're using these tools. Who does it belong to? Interesting point of view. I have this point of view. You're realizing that it doesn't have to be about fighting, but it could be about being in the question of what else is actually possible to create something greater where everybody wins.
Exactly. And as you said, it's like those two parties, how is like we let them grow by aligning or resisting one of them. So they become solid. In a way of them just like to melt down and for the change to begin, we just be interesting point of view, and we ask questions and we demand the change.
Right.
And that's what I was functioning from. I was always like, I remind myself, and I have a paper that a sticky note, there's two P's in it. A P, the first one is the problem, the other P is a possibility. I can't choose both. I had to choose one.
I love that. That's a meme. You got to make a graphic. So which P do you want? Which P of the PP do you want?
With the PP. So there's
possibility or problem. I love that. That's awesome.
Or problem. And what else is possible every day? And it's like about not buying the problems or not buying the suffering, the change started to come.
Beautiful. Wow.
The change started to come like step by step. And it's like, I remember it's like there is a chapter in Dane's here book, Dr. Dane He's book, is Being You, Changing the World. Is like a leader, the one who goes and he doesn't require followers.
Right.
So always that I kept that whenever I was moving. It's like, I'm just going to be a leader. I always wanted to be someone who matters.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to matter in my life.
Yeah.
So I didn't require followers. I didn't require anyone. It's like I'm a human. It's like in times I was like, okay, I'm just doing this and I don't know. It's like someone is gonna hear me and then it's like I go back. These tools of access consciousness, I always call them as like as you brush your teeth. You don't brush your teeth once. You brush your teeth 2 or 3 times a day, and then every day.
Yeah.
So tools is the same. It's like you brush your teeth. You use the tool and then you use the tool and then it's like the junk comes, but you don't buy it. And then you brush your teeth again and you go off.
Well, and you start to see your life start to change. But what's neat about it is it actually changes exponentially. So, and it changes in ways you couldn't even have predicted. You can't even set goals for how you would like to change. You know, it's more like it's unbelievable when you get out of the way and just use the tools.
Exactly.
So, what would you like to actually see in the world, just in general, but also like maybe just could access consciousness is just a set of tools. Okay, you don't have to give up your religion, you don't have to give up your political points of view or whatever. There are just a set of tools to add to your life to help you to create the life that you desire. What would you like to see in the world in general, and then also with the tools of access?
What I learned from Access is that every being and every person matters. And what would be that in the world if everyone with their points of view, thoughts, they matter?
Yeah.
And there is no separation between one being or another.
That's awesome.
There's just being and flying. It's like when you see birds are flying, maybe they don't fly the same, but it's like they're always in gratitude to each other. So it's like we're humans. It's like we just be in no separation, just be.
Yeah. I mean, we're all sharing this beautiful planet together. It's like, you know, why aren't we all working together to actually to create greater for all? And we'll have our different points of view about certain things, but that's all they are. They're just points of view. So, and you know, it's like for me being in the healthcare field for, I don't know, 30 something years, I don't know, maybe 30 something years or so, you know, I would just love to see the world not having to be governed by the pharmaceutical world. I am grateful for modern medicine when it's necessary and required. But again, that's a point of view too, of when it's necessary and required. But if I'm in the middle of a medical emergency, I'm glad there's modern medicine. I'm glad I live in the year 2022. What I don't like seeing is our rights being taken away from us, because I am a healthy person. I am health conscious. I have studied anatomy and physiology and the different sciences. And so I just choose to take care of my body a little bit different than what we're seeing in mainstream media. And so again, it's not about right or wrong. It's just simply about choice. But part of oneness, part of communion, in order to have that, is for us to be able to receive one another without a point of view. And that would be awesome. And I hear what you're saying. And what's awesome though? It's like you and I are experiencing that in little pockets, right? It's like when we work together, when you've hosted me a couple of times, and when we've done calls together, and what you were on the Being You Day, the bars, what was it? Bars Day or whatever we had, International Global Bars Day. Thank you. And that was such a beautiful segment. But it's like you start to see and perceive what's actually possible, no matter how different we are, no matter where we come from, in whatever parts of the world, we can actually have oneness and communion if we allowed ourselves to. And it's a gift. And actually, that really hit me when I came to Saudi Arabia, both times. I'm like, it's possible. It was actually palpable. You could actually like touch it and smell it and hear it and see it, like what's possible when we have total receiving of one another. There is no separation. And I got to see that in the classes that we were doing together in Saudi. And I don't know why it had to be there for me, for it to be like, oh my God, but that's just where it happened to have really like sink into my universe. And so, yeah, so thank you for being the gift to the world. Thank you for being a gift in my life on a personal and a professional level. And how can people find you? I know you're doing a ton of classes and stuff. Like, do you have a website that people can go to and things like that?
For now, they can go to my Instagram.
Okay.
And the website is going to be launched next week.
Okay. So what's your Instagram? Just your name?
Joy.by.Ana.
Joy.what? By Anna?
Joy.by.Ana.
Joy.by.Ana. Got it. Awesome. Yep. So you can check her out there. And yeah, she's a rock star and a very good friend of mine. So thank you for being with me today. And thank you for what you're doing in the world, and your amazing strength and courage.
Thank you for sweet words, Dr. Anthony, my dear friend. And thank you for being you. And thank you for the generosity of self that you have and spirit. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Adore you. Bye.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. If this conversation has been a contribution to you, please share, subscribe, or leave a review. For more about Anthony, please come visit drAnthonymattis.com. And if you'd like to know more about the amazing tools of Access Consciousness, you can go to www.accessconsciousness.com.